Hi, and welcome to Off the Shelf with Christine and Katie, where we share with you our book recommendations to help you build your TBR list, the TB Read list, for the future. This month, we wanted to share with you some great historical reads, both fiction and nonfiction. And because it's also Women's History Month, we thought it would be a great idea to share some books about women throughout history, whether they are actual women or just fictional women.
And just some fun picks, basically.
Yes. So we hope you enjoy these titles and maybe find a favorite or two of your own. Later on in this video, we're also being joined by Kate, who is an aficionado of this genre, and she's going to share a couple of her picks as well. We're going to get started with some fiction picks. And Katie, why don't you get us started with a book that we might have mentioned once or twice before?
Maybe several times, but we will never stop mentioning it.
No.
So the first fiction pick that we have is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. And while this novel is not about any particular historical woman, it does cover a period of time when women sought out secret apothecaries for both cures to ailments as well as some potential poisons. The novel's plot has a second purpose in mind, with revenge and mystery as well. Thoroughly enjoyable to read, and I can't wait to see what else Sarah Penner has in store for us, as this was her debut novel. And we're really looking forward to that TV show.
Exactly. Haven't gotten any word on her next book, but as soon as we do, I'm sure we'll mention it to you.
We will mention it 500 times. And the next one we want to mention is Kindred by Octavia Butler. And this celebrated award-winning book tells the story of Dana, a young black woman who is suddenly inexplicably transported to her home in the 1970s. Transported from her home in the 1970s, California to pre-Civil War South. Talk about a bad day.
Yeah.
As she time travels between worlds, one in which she's a free woman and one where she's a part of her own complicated familial history on a southern plantation, comes to realize the challenge she's been given to protect a young slaveholder until he can father her great-grandfather. So interesting time travel story.
Yes. It's also a great graphic novel, which I've just recently read. So if you're somebody who's a little sensitive, because this book does have some brutal aspects to it, and from what I understand, it's quite graphic in
so
that
maybe
sense.
Not for you.
You know, the graphic novel is an excellent pick.
Yes.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Was the film based on this, or was that separate?
I don't believe there was a film based on this book.
Oh, okay.
That I'm aware of.
I think the plot's just similar to another film.
It's very similar to another film.
Yeah. Okay,
and this one does have some films.
Yes, and this one has a lot of films, and a lot we'll recommend shortly. Okay, and the next one we recommend is The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. It has multiple movies as well as TV shows. I highly recommend watching The Tudors. It's not exactly based on this, but it's a lot of fun. It might be a little graphic just for some viewers, just as an FYI. But this fictionalized account of the lives of the 16th century aristocrats, Mary Boleyn, one-time mistress of King Henry VIII, and her sister Anne, who became the monarch's ill-fated second wife. It's also, like we said, a really great movie. So this historical fiction was inspired by, but is not an actual, factual retelling. Philippa Gregory then went on to write many more books, 15 in total so far, in the Tudor family series, covering everything from the War of the Roses to the Elizabethan era. So there's a lot for you to dig into, and it's a really fun series.
And a lot of those books, like we said, have been made into TV series, like the White Princess.
There's a Spanish Princess also. So there's a lot of TV series to watch.
Now, next we have Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. This is also a PBS TV series, which I would highly recommend. I loved it. On June 19th, 1837, she was a teenager. But on June 20th, 1837, she was a queen. The men who run the country doubt that she can rule, but Victoria would go on to rule England for 63 years with a very definite idea of the kind of queen she wants to be. Daisy Goodwin's research included Queen Victoria's actual diaries, and she also wrote the screen adaptation of her novel to the PBS series.
Oh, I didn't know that.
This one is actually based on factual accounts that she, gleaned from the diaries, and it's I found out a lot of interesting things. When we think of Victorian period, we think of more like that prim and proper, but Queen Victoria was loved her husband dearly, but her and her husband were very feisty young married couple. So the next one we have here is Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. And this historical novel is based on the incredible true life story of Dorothy Kirwan Thomas. She was a free black woman who rose from slavery to become one of the wealthiest and most powerful landowners in the colonial West Indies. She was born into slavery in 1756 on the tiny Caribbean island of Montserrat. She bought her freedom and that of her sister and her mother from her Irish planter father and built a legacy of wealth and power as an entrepreneur, merchant, hotelier, and planter. Quite a phenomenal
I was going to say, she has a lot of talents.
At that time and era as well.
Well, yes.
Next, we have The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict. So, in December 1926, Agatha Christie disappeared for 11 days, and no one knows what really happened. She claimed amnesia. There have been several theories, all ranging from a nervous breakdown that was brought on by the death of her mother and her the embarrassment of her husband's affair, to a cynical publicity stunt to promote the successful but still little known author. This historical fiction novel offers one explanation, and it does deal with the husband's infidelity.
Yes.
For her strange disappearance.
And I also just want to mention there's many other mystery novels that tackle this subject, even debating whether she left to just go write a play. I'll include that title here because I've forgotten it. But there's a lot of like movies based on why she disappeared for those 11 days, and it's really fun to talk about. All right, and the next one we want to mention is In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. And this novel is inspired by the true story of three Mirabelle sisters who in 1960 were murdered for their part in an underground plot to overthrow the government. Set in the Dominican Republic during the rise of the Trujillo dictatorship, the novel shows the corrupt ways in which the Trujillo rose to power and kept the Dominican people under control for using fear and propaganda, thereby leading to revolutionary aims. It sounds amazing, and I can't wait to read it.
It's also a movie, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah, very good.
Do you know the title?
In the Time of the Butterflies.
Oh, the same title.
Same exact title.
I should have figured that.
Yes. So next we have a book by an author I've mentioned previously, Lisa See. She tends to write wonderful novels from an historical viewpoint that deal with women and their friendships and what their circumstances were in these different time periods. The one I wanted to talk about today is called Snowflower and the Secret Fan. And like I said, like many of her other novels, this story focuses on the lifelong friendship of two women who develop their own secret code as a way to contend with the rigid social norms imposed on women in 19th century China. As 7-year-old girls, Snowflower and Lily are matched as Les Tongs, or Old Saints, bound together for all eternity. Isolated by their families, they communicate by taking turns writing in a secret language, the Nushu, between the folds of a white silk fan. In a parallel story, in present-day Shanghai, their descendants are also struggling to maintain the closeness of their childhood friendship in the face of demanding careers, complicated love lives, and the continuously evolving Shanghai. Now, we have a little subset here for those who like a little espionage, maybe some World War I, World War II stories. So we have these picks that are all based on real women spies.
Yes, we kept seeing so many, so we couldn't help but mention them. So the first one we want to recommend is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. And the description is joining the elite code-breaking team at Bletchley Park, the isolated English country house that during World War II became the intelligence hub of Great Britain. 3 women from very different walks of life uncover a spy's very dangerous agenda years later against the backdrop of the royal wedding of Elizabeth and Philip. The best and brightest minds of England, many of them women, were sent to work at Bletchley Park in secrecy to break supposedly unbreakable Axis military codes. Sounds like a fun day job. Well, the main characters were fictional, but influenced by several real-life women. There are appearances by real-life figures such as Alan Turing, Prince Philip, and Queen Elizabeth. And I also highly recommend the book about Alan Turing, speaking of which, in the movie. I forget the title, but I'll show it here, but they're also very great.
Yes, those are also very good.
Okay, and the next one we're going to recommend is The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. This historical fiction story is based on the real-life World War I spy ring called the Alice Network, which operated in German-occupied France and Belgium. The novel tells the story of how two women, a female recruited spy to the Alice Network in France during World War I, and an unconventional American socialite searching for her cousin in 1947, are brought together in a memorizing story of courage and redemption. Sounds like actually a great story.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one we want to recommend is The Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. This author's debut novel is a World War II era story based on real people and events. The novel tells the intertwined stories of three women: Caroline Federday, a New York socialite and philanthropist; Kasia Kuzmarek, a Polish prisoner at the Ravensbrück concentration camp for women; and Erta Oberhauser, a Nazi doctor at Ravensbrück. Sorry for my poor German, it's been many years.
It's better than mine. Great job.
I tried. But yeah, it sounds like a great story though. And based on real life people, so that's really fascinating.
It always makes it more intense.
More believable, yes. I would say, because at least you can factually track them. And the last one for this series is called The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff. And it's another story based on true female agents in the time of World War II. And it's beginning in Manhattan in 1946. While passing through Grand Central Terminal on her way to work, Grace Healy finds an abandoned suitcase tucked underneath a bench, which, if you've ever been in New York, they never advise you to open. But she opens the suitcase, where she discovers several different photographs, each of a different woman. And in a moment of impulse, Grace takes the photographs and quickly leaves the station. She soon learns that the suitcase belonged to a woman named Eleanor Trigg, a leader of a network of female agents who were deployed out of London during the war. 12 of these women were sent to occupied Europe as couriers and radio operators to aid the resistance, but they never returned home, and their fate's a mystery. If I were that woman who found the suitcase, I would definitely write a book too.
Yes.
That sounds amazing.
I mean, I think what fascinated me most about finding these books, and there are more if you're interested in women spies, was just how much of a role women spies did play in the wars. I had no idea.
Yes, so many. And it was all secret because their husbands were to war and they were supposed to take their jobs and then never ever talk about it again.
Yes.
So it's really fascinating. And if you want more of those recommendations, feel free to reach out to us. We'll include something in the link below.
Yes.
But now we want to switch over to the nonfiction side of these historical fiction picks.
So these are some nonfiction books that actually read like a fiction novel. So they're very good picks to learn a little bit of history. First one I wanted to talk about was The Five: The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. So Polly, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary Jane are famous for the same thing, though they've never met. What they had in common was the year of their murders, 1888. The person responsible was never identified, but the character created by the press to fill the gap has become far more famous than any of these five women. For more than a century, newspapers have been keen to tell us that the Ripper preyed on prostitutes. Not only is this untrue, as historian Hallie Rubenhold has discovered, it has prevented the real stories of these fascinating women from being told. They died because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, but their greatest misfortune was that they were born a woman.
When you told me about this, I wanted to read it really quickly.
And I think you mentioned to me that just recently they've come out with some possible identities to Jack the Ripper.
Yes,
so.
It was not too long ago. There was an article that was released that said they think they've finally decided on the identity of him. So if that's true, that's amazing.
Yeah. Next one we have up is Hidden Figures by Margaret Lee Shetterly, which is also an awesome movie. Yes. This is the phenomenal true story of the black female mathematicians at NASA at the leading edge of the feminist and civil rights movement, whose calculations helped fuel some of America's greatest achievements in space. These mathematicians were called into service during the labor shortages of World War II. Suddenly, these overlooked math wizards had a shot at jobs worthy of their skills. Starting in World War II and moving through the Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, and the space race, Hidden Figures follows the accounts of Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Christine Darden, 4 African-American women who participated in some of NASA's greatest successes. Now, for any of you who have seen the movie or go to see the movie, you will know there are only 3 of these women in the movie, and that's just because the movie focuses on a 2-year period in the book, not the entire book. So
So before the other woman was
yeah,
there.
so we find out more about Christine Darden later on. So,
but still a great movie, and I highly recommend it.
The next one we have is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot, which is also a movie.
And a great movie, too.
Yes. So her name was Henrietta Lacks, but scientists know her as Gila. She was a poor southern tobacco farmer, yet her cells, which were taken without her knowledge or her family's consent, became one of the most important tools in medicine. The first immortal human cells grown in culture, they are still alive today, though she has been dead for more than 60 years.
Yes, which is an amazing feat to still be alive.
Gila's cells were vital for developing the polio vaccine. They uncovered secrets of cancer and viruses, helped lead in vitro fertilization, cloning, gene mapping, and they have been bought and sold by the billions. Yet her family never received any of this money. She is buried in an unmarked grave. Her family did not learn of her immortality until more than 20 years after her death, when scientists began using her husband and children in research without informed consent. The story of the Lacks family is connected to the dark history of experimentation on African Americans, the birth of bioethics, and the legal battles over whether we control the stuff we are made of.
Yes, and it's a really amazing story that they didn't even know that the mother cells were being used, and they do buy them. Companies have paid for them.
Billions of dollars.
And the family, only recently actually, I saw an article that they finally received money.
Yeah.
And it was a very long time, and they had to fight for it.
Wow. So these are just some of our historical books centering around women we think you might like. But like we mentioned, we have a guest today. So Kate, who's our reference manager and loves this genre, had a couple picks. So let's see what Kate's picks are.
Hi everybody, my name's Kate. I'm a reference librarian here at the Middletown Township Public Library. I am very happy to be joining Katie and Christine for this month's Off the Shelf, where we're going to be talking about books related to women's history. I actually run the History Book Club here at the library. We meet on Tuesday mornings once a month. We read a ton of nonfiction, and today I'm going to share with you a couple of the books that we've read in the book club, as well as books I've read personally that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to share them with you today. The first book is The Astronauts' Wives Club by Lily Koppel. And I really enjoyed this book because everybody knows the story behind the Mercury 7 astronauts, but you don't even really hear that too much about their wives and their families that stayed back on Earth while they were up in space. So I really enjoyed reading about this. All the wives had different personalities, but they all really joined together and they really supported each other during the entire NASA program. So I really enjoyed it. I think you'll enjoy it as well. Another book is The Radium Girls by Kate Moore. This was a really difficult book to get through. It's nonfiction. It's a true story. Difficult book to get through because of the content. It was about the Radium Girls, and these are girls back in the early 1900s that worked at radium dial factories. They actually worked nearby. They worked this plant was up in Orange, New Jersey. They worked at these dial factories painting clocks on the watches for the soldiers in the war, and the paint and everything that they used was toxic, and it was actually killing them. Like I said, it was a tough story, but it was really interesting to read. The author did a great job pulling together all the information. And I highly recommend this. We actually had the author, Kate Moore, here at the library virtually a year or two ago, and she did a phenomenal job talking about it. The last book I'm going to talk to you about today is fiction. It's Catherine Parr, The Sixth Wife by Alison Weir. I am a Tudor England history fanatic, as my coworkers will agree with. I read all about Tudor England. I love it. It's fantastic. Alison Weir is a phenomenal author. She actually did a 6-book series, fictional book series, on the 6 wives of Henry VIII. And this one is about Catherine Parr, the 6th wife. She survived her marriage to Henry VIII because she was his last wife. He actually predeceased her. She ended up dying about 2 years after him from complications from childbirth. But I love reading all about that, and Alison Weir is such a great author. It reads like fiction, but she does such in-depth research that a lot of the information she's providing is accurate in such a way. So I really enjoyed all of these books. I hope you guys will take a look and see if you like them as well. and I'm happy to be here today. Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kate.
Kate. So we hope you enjoyed our picks and some of Kate's picks. We'll have a list linked below to all these books in our catalog so you can take a look and maybe check a few of them out. We'll also have a link to our book recommendations form where if you're looking for, something a little bit different, another book maybe that we didn't mention here, please feel free to fill it out. I also will have a link there for our email address. Feel free to send us any comments or suggestions on a topic you would like to see covered. But I think that's it for this month.
Yes, pretty much.
So, and next month we're going to be talking about books, about books,
About books and about libraries.
and
And librarians.
So, see you then. Have a
Take
good
care.
day. Bye.